I never thought a single thread could unravel my entire life. The needle slipped through silk for the 1,000th time that night, my fingers moving on muscle memory alone. Outside my shop window, the coastal fog rolled in thick and gray, swallowing the streetlights whole. Inside, the air tasted of fabric dust and desperation. 3 wedding gowns hung on their forms like ghosts, all due by Friday. It was Tuesday, and I hadn't slept in 36 hours. My father's cough echoed from the back room, wet, rattling, wrong. I tried to ignore it, tried to focus on the seam beneath my hands, but each sound drove ice deeper into my chest. The doctors had said months. That was 6 months ago. Elena. His voice was barely a whisper. Like and subscribe if you love listen these stories. I set down my needle and went to him. He sat hunched in the old armchair we'd dragged in from home, his face the color of old newspaper. When he looked up at me, I saw something that terrified me more than his illness ever had. Resignation. Papa, let me get you some water. Elena, stop. His hand caught mine, cold and trembling. I need you to listen to me. When I'm gone, don't. When I'm gone, he continued, squeezing my fingers with what little strength remained. You sell this place. You take that money and you run far from this city. You hear me? Nothing here but... The words died as his body convulsed. His hand released mine as he doubled over, gasping for air that wouldn't come. Red bloomed on his lips. Blood. The next hours blurred into a nightmare of sirens and fluorescent lights. Nurses moved around us with practiced efficiency, while doctors murmured in clinical tones about advanced deterioration and immediate intervention. I sat in a plastic chair that had been molded for no human body, my dress still covered in pins from the gowns I'd left behind, and listened to a man with tired eyes explain that my father needed surgery. Tomorrow. The cost? My voice sounded like it belonged to someone else. He slid a paper across the desk. The numbers didn't make sense at first. I read them twice, 3 times, waiting for them to transform into something possible. They didn't. I don't have this. The confession tasted like failure. I can pay in installments. My business is Miss Cruz. His tone wasn't cruel, just factual. Without the advance payment, we can't schedule the procedure. I'm sorry. Sorry. Such a small word for such an enormous collapse. I spent the next 2 hours begging. I called the 3 clients who owed me money, none answered. I tried the bank where I'd been rejected for a loan twice before. I even considered the pawn shop on 5th Street, though I owned nothing worth the sum they demanded. My phone battery died somewhere around midnight, and I sat in the hospital corridor with my head in my hands, trying to remember how to breathe. That's when the nurse found me. Miss Cruz? She was young, with kind eyes that had seen too much suffering. There's been a development regarding your father's account. I looked up, hope a dangerous spark in my chest. Did his insurance, someone has paid your bill. In full. The words didn't register at first. I stared at her, waiting for the punchline, the catch, the mistake. That's not possible. The payment cleared 10 minutes ago. Your father's surgery is scheduled for 6 a.m. Who? I stood so fast the room tilted. Who paid it? There was no name, just this. She handed me a small card, cream-colored and heavy. On it, embossed in gold, was a symbol, a lion with a crown, regal and vaguely threatening. My hand started to shake. I'd lived in this coastal city my entire life. I knew the stories everyone knew, the whispers that circulated through neighborhoods like mine. I knew what that lion meant. The Moretti family, the name spoken in lowered voices, associated with locked doors and bodies found in the harbor. There must be a mistake. But, even as I said it, I knew. Debts like these never came free. The nurse shifted uncomfortably. There's a message as well. You're to meet your benefactor tonight, if you wish to express your gratitude. And if I don't wish to, her silence was answer enough. I went home first, though calling it home felt generous. The apartment above the Tailor shop was little more than a storage room with a hot plate, but it was mine. I washed my face, changed into the one dress I owned that didn't have pins stuck in it, and tried to steady my breathing. The second envelope arrived as I was lacing my shoes. Someone knocked 3 sharp raps that made my heart leap into my throat. When I opened the door, no one was there. Just a black envelope on the mat, sealed with that same golden lion. Inside, a single card, *Pier 7, midnight, come alone Elena, *, he knew my name. Of course he knew my name. He probably knew everything, my debts, my father's illness, the 3 wedding gowns still hanging unfinished in my shop. Men like that always knew. I should have run. Should have taken my father and disappeared into the night, consequences be damned. But the surgery was in 6 hours, and running meant letting him die. So I went. The coastal road stretched dark and empty, fog turning the streetlights into useless halos. My footsteps echoed on the wooden planks of Pier 7, each one taking me further from safety and closer to whatever waited in the shadows. The ocean breathed beneath me, patient and hungry. A car idled at the pier's end, black, expensive, with windows tinted dark enough to hide anything. As I approached, the back door opened. No driver emerged, no greeting called out, just that open door, waiting. I thought of my father, pale and gasping in his hospital bed. I thought of the blood on his lips and the resignation in his eyes. Then, I stepped inside. The interior smelled of leather and something else, cologne, maybe, or just the particular scent of wealth. A man sat across from me, his features obscured by shadow despite the car's soft ambient lighting. Deliberate, I realized. He wanted me off balance. Miss Cruz. His voice was smooth, cultured, with an edge that suggested violence kept carefully leashed. Thank you for coming. Did I have a choice? A pause, then something that might have been a smile. There's always a choice. The consequences, however, vary considerably. The car began to move, gliding away from the pier with whisper-quiet precision. I fought the urge to grab the door handle, to throw myself out onto the road and take my chances with the pavement. Where are we going? Dinner. I find these conversations go better over good food. I'm not hungry. You will be. The restaurant materialized from the fog like something from a dream, all glass and candlelight, perched on a cliff overlooking the black expanse of ocean. No other cars in the lot, no other diners visible through the windows, just us. Inside, a table had been set near the window, intimate and isolated. As we approached, the man stepped fully into the light for the first time. I stopped breathing. He was younger than I'd expected, mid-30s, maybe, with dark hair swept back from a face that belonged in Renaissance paintings. Sharp cheekbones, strong jaw, and eyes so dark they looked black in the candlelight. Handsome in a way that felt dangerous, like a blade hidden in silk. But it was the scar that held my attention, a thin white line that traced from his left temple to his jaw, bisecting his face like a crack in marble. Adrian Moretti. He offered his hand. Please sit. I didn't take the hand. Didn't sit. Why did you pay my father's bill? Direct. I appreciate that. He settled into his chair with the easy confidence of a man who'd never been denied anything. Sit down, Elena. Let's discuss the terms of our arrangement. There is no arrangement. I didn't ask for your help. No, you begged everyone else first. The bank, your clients, even that pawn shop on 5th Street with the barred windows. He lifted a wine glass, studying me over its rim. I saved you the trouble of debasing yourself further. Heat flooded my face. You had me followed. I had you researched. There's a difference. He set down the glass. Now sit, or I'll make a call and your father's surgery will be canceled before dawn. I sat. The chair was more comfortable than anything I'd ever owned, which somehow made everything worse. A waiter appeared from nowhere with food I didn't remember. Ordering pasta that smelled like heaven, bread still warm from the oven, wine the color of garnets. Eat, Adrian said. You look like you haven't had a proper meal in weeks. What do you want from me? The same thing anyone wants when they invest a considerable sum. He leaned back, studying me with an intensity that made my skin prickle. A return. I'll pay you back. It'll take time, but I can make installments. I don't want your money, Elena. The way he said my name, familiar, possessive, sent warning signals racing down my spine. Then what? He reached into his jacket and produced a document, sliding it across the table. The paper was thick, expensive, covered in dense legal text. At the top, in bold letters, * marriage contract *. I stared at it, certain I'd misread. Is this a joke? I never joke about contracts. You can't be serious. You don't even know me. I know everything about you. His voice remained calm, factual. Elena Maria Cruz, 26 years old, only child. Mother died when you were 8, car accident on the coastal highway. Father, Roberto Cruz, former tailor who taught you the trade before his diagnosis. You run a small shop on Morrison Street, barely breaking even, taking any commission you can get. You have $42 in your checking account, $17 in savings, and you're 3 months behind on rent. Each word landed like a physical blow. He recited my life with the detachment of someone reading a grocery list. You have no family beyond your father, he continued. No romantic relationships, no close friends. You work 16-hour days and eat one meal if you're lucky. You're drowning, Elena, and you have been for a very long time. Stop, my voice cracked. I'm offering you a lifeline. Marriage to me means your father receives the best medical care available. His bills, covered. Your shop, saved. Your debts, erased. He tapped the contract. All I ask in return is your hand and your discretion. Why? The question came out as a whisper. Why me? Something flickered behind his eyes, too quick to identify. Gone before I could process it. Does it matter? Yes. He was quiet for a long moment, his gaze drifting to the window and the dark ocean beyond. When he spoke again, his voice carried a weight it hadn't before. Because I can. Because I need a wife, for certain. Business purposes. And because you're perfect for what I require. What you require, I repeated numbly. Like I'm a piece of furniture. Like you're a solution. He pushed the contract closer. Read it. You'll find the terms generous. Separate bedrooms, freedom to maintain your business, no requirement for intimate relations unless you choose otherwise. My face burned. How considerate. I'm not a monster, Elena. I'm a businessman offering a transaction. You need money. I need a wife. It's simple. Nothing about this is simple. Then let me make it simpler. He leaned forward, all pretense of civility falling away. His voice dropped to something cold and final. That document in front of you represents every debt you owe. Your rent, your father's medical bills, the suppliers you've been dodging, your landlord who's preparing eviction papers. He pulled out his phone, tapped the screen, and turned it toward me. I saw scanned documents, notices, invoices, legal letterhead, all bearing my name, all stamped, acquired by Moretti Holdings. I own your life, he said softly, every thread of it. You can sign this contract and become my wife, living in comfort while your father recovers. Or you can refuse, and I'll call in every debt by Friday. Your shop will close, your apartment will be seized, and your father. He let the sentence hang, unfinished. The pasta turned to ash in my mouth. This is extortion. This is reality. He produced a pen, black lacquer, gold trim, probably worth more than my car. Choose. My hands trembled as I reached for the pen. I thought about my father's smile when I'd learned to sew my first straight seam. Thought about my mother's laugh, faint now in memory. Thought about the life I'd imagined as a child, full of love and light and choices that were mine to make. Then I signed my name. Adrian watched with dark, unreadable eyes. When I set down the pen, he took the contract and folded it precisely, tucking it back into his jacket. Tomorrow, he said, 10 mm, bring nothing. Everything you need will be provided. Tomorrow? The word came out strangled. I need time to. Time is a luxury we don't have. My associates are already making arrangements. He stood, buttoning his jacket with practiced ease. The car will collect you at 9:30. Don't be late, Mrs. Moretti. The name hit me like a slap. He was halfway to the door when I found my voice again. I'll hate you for this. Adrian paused, glancing back over his shoulder. The candlelight caught his scar, turning it silver. For just a moment, something human flickered across his face. Regret, maybe, or longing. I know, he said quietly. But you'll be alive to hate me. That's more than you had this morning. Then he was gone, leaving me alone with cold pasta and the ruins of my life. The car returned me to Morrison Street just before dawn. My father's surgery would begin in an hour. I stood outside my shop, key in hand, staring at the darkened window and the unfinished wedding gowns beyond. Somewhere in the distance, church bells chimed. I didn't sleep. I sat in my workroom and sewed until the sun rose, finishing the 3 gowns with mechanical precision. Other brides would wear them, would smile and spin, and promise forever to men they chose. I tried not to think about what I'd chosen, what I'd been forced to choose. At 9:15, I packed a small bag, a few clothes, my mother's photograph, the scissors my father gave me when I turned 16. Everything else would stay, like a museum to the life I was leaving behind. The car arrived exactly on time. This driver at least had the courtesy to speak, offering a polite, "Good morning, Mrs. Moretti," that made my stomach turn. We drove north along the coastal highway, away from the city's cramped streets and into hills I'd only seen from a distance. The houses grew larger, set back from the road behind iron gates and manicured hedges. Then we turned onto a private drive. The Moretti mansion revealed itself slowly, emerging from morning mist like something from a Gothic novel. White stone, tall windows, columns that spoke of old money and older power. The grounds stretched in every direction: gardens, fountains, a view of the ocean that belonged on postcards. Beautiful, isolated. A prison, dressed in marble. The car stopped at the front entrance, where a woman waited, 50s, gray hair pulled into a severe bun, wearing black, as if in perpetual mourning. "I am Lucia," she said in accented English, her tone neither warm nor cold. "I manage the household. Come." I followed her through doors that could have accommodated a small car, into an entrance hall that echoed with every footstep. Crystal chandeliers hung like frozen waterfalls. Paintings lined the walls, old masters, I thought, though I was no expert. Everything gleamed with the kind of cleanliness that required an army of staff. "Mr. Moretti is occupied with business," Lucia said, leading me up a curved business staircase. "He has asked that you be made comfortable. Your quarters are on the 3rd floor. Separate bedrooms," I remembered. Yes. Something flickered in her expression, approval or pity. I couldn't tell. "Here." She opened a door onto a suite larger than my entire apartment. A 4-poster bed dominated the space, dressed in linens that looked softer than clouds. A sitting area, a desk, French doors that opened onto a balcony overlooking the gardens. Expensive, elegant, and utterly impersonal. "Your belongings will be unpacked. Dinner is at 8. Mr. Moretti prefers punctuality." Lucia moved toward the door, then paused. "A word of advice, Mrs. Moretti?" I nodded, too overwhelmed to speak. "He is not always this gentle," she said quietly. "Remember that." Then she left me alone in my gilded cage. I explored the suite with numb fascination, opening drawers to find them already stocked with clothes my size, expensive brands I recognized from magazines. The closet held dresses, shoes, everything a proper wife might need, all selected without my input, as if I were a doll being dressed for display. The bathroom was marble and gold, with a tub large enough to swim in. I caught my reflection in the mirror, exhausted, hollow-eyed, wearing yesterday's dress and tomorrow's chains. A knock startled me from my examination. A young maid entered, carrying a garment bag. "For tonight, Mrs. Moretti. Mr. Moretti has requested you wear this to dinner." Of course he had. The dress was deep emerald green, simple but clearly expensive. It fit perfectly when I tried it on that evening, which only reinforced how thoroughly Adrian had researched me. Every measurement, every preference, catalogued and utilized. I found the dining room at 8 exactly, following the sound of classical music through corridors that all looked the same. Adrian sat at the head of a table long enough to seat 20, reading something on a tablet. He looked up as I entered, and something unreadable crossed his face. "Beautiful," he said, standing. "Green suits you. You would know, since you picked it." I took the seat indicated, not at the opposite end, but close enough to converse, close enough to feel his presence like heat from a fire. I have good taste. "In dresses or in prisoners?" A ghost of a smile. "Both, apparently." He poured wine red, expensive, and slid a glass toward me. "Your father came through surgery well. He's in recovery now," responding positively. The relief was physical, stealing my breath. "Thank you. Don't thank me. You're paying for it. With my freedom. With your name." He raised his glass. "To pragmatic arrangements." I didn't drink. Just watched as staff emerged with plates of food I couldn't have pronounced. Lobster, I thought. Some kind of delicate fish. Vegetables arranged like art. "You don't have to be afraid of me," Adrian said quietly, cutting into his meal with surgical precision. "Don't I?" I meant what I said. Separate lives, separate spaces. You're free to continue your work. I've had an atelier prepared on the 2nd floor, with everything you'll need. Your clients can meet you there. How magnanimous. It's practical. A wife with her own interests draws less attention than one who appears coerced. He met my eyes. "Which I acknowledge. You have been. But the situation is what it is. And what is the situation, exactly? I leaned forward. Why do you really need a wife? What are these business purposes you mentioned? Legitimacy, he said simply. My associates, some are old-fashioned. They trust family men more than bachelors. They believe marriage demonstrates stability, commitment. A pause. They're not entirely wrong. So, I'm a prop. You're a partner in a mutually beneficial arrangement. He set down his fork. Elena, I understand your anger, but try to see the advantage. You have security now. Protection. Your father will receive care for the rest of his life. And all I ask is that you play your part when necessary. Which is? The loving wife. In public. His gaze was steady, challenging. Can you do that? I thought about my father. Thought about the alternative. Do I have a choice? There's always a choice, but not all choices are equal. We ate in silence after that, the clink of silverware the only conversation. I studied him when he wasn't looking, the sharp lines of his face, the way his hands moved with controlled grace. He was handsome, I couldn't deny that, but beauty in a predator only made it more dangerous. I'll show you the atelier tomorrow, he said as dessert arrived, something chocolate and decadent. You'll find it well equipped. I took the liberty of having some of your current projects transferred here. You went into my shop? I had it done professionally. Everything is exactly as you left it. Except it wasn't. Nothing was exactly as I'd left it. My entire life had been dismantled and reassembled according to his specifications. After dinner, Lucia appeared to escort me back to my room. I caught Adrian watching me leave, his expression inscrutable in the candlelight. As I climbed the stairs, I heard music start again, piano, melancholy and beautiful. I didn't sleep that night either. I stood on the balcony and watched the moon track across the sky, silvering the gardens below. Somewhere in this mansion, Adrian Moretti was doing the same. Two strangers bound by paper and circumstance, pretending at marriage. The next morning, true to his word, Adrian showed me the atelier. It was perfect. Floor-to-ceiling windows flooded the space with natural light. Industrial sewing machines lined one wall top of the line, the kind I'd dreamed about but could never afford. Bolts of fabric stood organized by color and type. A cutting table stretched the length of the room, and there, carefully arranged on dress forms, were my unfinished projects. The gowns were delivered to your clients this morning, Adrian said from the doorway. I hope you don't mind. They were paid in full with generous bonuses. I ran my hand over the silk of a half-finished blazer, trying to process. Why? Because good work deserves compensation. No. Why all of this? I gestured at the room. The equipment, the setup, this must have cost considerably less than your resentment would cost me. He stepped inside, his presence somehow filling the space despite its size. I told you, Elena. I'm not a monster. I want you comfortable here. Comfortable. The word tasted bitter. In my cage. If you insist on seeing it that way. He moved to the window, looking out over the grounds. But consider that cage has windows. It has tools. It has purpose. He turned back to me. What did your old life have? The question landed like a punch. Because he was right, damn him. My old life had been survival, nothing more. Endless work for diminishing returns, watching my father fade while I scrambled to save him. My freedom, I said finally. Freedom to starve? Freedom to fail? He shook his head. That's not freedom, Elena. That's just slow death with better marketing. Before I could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and something hardened in his expression. I have business to attend to. Feel free to work here as you like. Lucia will bring lunch at noon. He was at the door when I found my voice. Adrian? He paused. Thank you. For this. I gestured at the atelier. Even if everything else is. Complicated? That's one word for it. A genuine smile flickered across his face, brief. But there. You're welcome. Then he was gone, leaving me alone with silk and thread and questions I couldn't answer. I threw myself into work. It was the only thing that made sense, the only thing that felt like mine. I had commissions to complete, designs to finish, and somehow, in this strange new life, the sewing became a meditation. Needle through, fabric, thread pulling tight, creating order from chaos. Days blurred into a week. Adrian was often absent, his business, taking him away at odd hours. When we did cross paths at dinners, in corridors, he was unfailingly polite, almost distant, like I was a house guest rather than a wife. But sometimes I'd feel his eyes on me, turn to find him watching with an intensity that made my pulse stutter. The household operated like a well-oiled machine. Lucia managed everything with quiet efficiency. The staff moved like ghosts, appearing when needed and vanishing otherwise. I learned the rhythms: breakfast at 7, lunch at noon, dinner at 8. Adrian's study was off limits. So was the East Wing. I didn't ask why. Part of me didn't want to know. It was in the second week that he asked me to sew something for him. "A suit," he said, finding me in the atelier one afternoon. "I have an important meeting next month. I'd like something distinctive." I looked up from the dress I was hemming. "You want me to make you a suit? Is that so strange? You're a tailor." "I mostly do women's wear. But you can work with men's suits. Your father taught you." Not a question. Of course he knew. I set down my needle. "What kind of distinctive? Surprise me." He walked to the fabric wall, running his hand along the bolts. "Something that makes a statement without screaming. Power, but refined. Dangerous, but sophisticated?" He glanced back, amused. "Yes, exactly that." I stood and joined him at the fabric wall, professional instincts taking over. "Charcoal would wash you out. Navy's too common for what you want." I pulled down a bolt of deep midnight blue, almost black, but with subtle depth. This, with a faint pinstripe in silver thread, visible only in the right light. His eyes lit with something like approval. "Show me. I'll need measurements." "Now? Unless you want a poorly fitted suit." A pause. Then he shrugged off his jacket and began, unbuttoning his vest. I fetched my tape measure, trying to ignore the sudden intimacy of the moment. He stood before me in his dress shirt, waiting. "Arms out," I said, all business. I measured his shoulders first broad, solid, then chest, waist, inseam. My hands moved with practiced efficiency, but I was hyper-aware of the warmth of him, the controlled breathing, the faint scent of his cologne. When I measured his neck, my fingers brushed the scar beneath his jaw. He went very still. "Sorry," I murmured. "It's fine." But it wasn't. I could feel the tension radiating off him, see the way his jaw tightened. The scar tissue was smooth, old. Whatever had given him that injury had happened years ago. "Who saved you?" The question slipped out before I could stop it. "What?" "At the restaurant. You said I looked like someone who saved you." I stepped back, giving him space. "Who was she?" Adrian's expression shuddered. "That's not relevant. It's relevant to why I'm here." He reached for his vest, redressing with sharp, angry movements. "Focus on the suit, Elena. The past stays in the past." He left without another word, leaving me alone with measurements and questions. But something had shifted. A crack in his armor, small but visible. I worked on the suit over the next week, losing myself in the precision of it. Every stitch had to be perfect. The pinstripe had to catch the light just right. I found myself obsessing over details that probably no one else would notice: the angle of the lapels, the weight of the buttons, the way the shoulders would drape. It wasn't for him, I told myself. It was professional pride. I was lying. The dinner arrived with engraved invitations on cream cardstock. "You are cordially invited." It was being held here, at the mansion. 20 guests, all associates of Adrian's. My first public appearance as Mrs. Moretti. Lucia helped me prepare, selecting a gown from the closet, dark red, elegant, with a neckline that managed to be both modest and alluring. She pinned my hair up, applied makeup with an artist's precision. "Remember," she said, fastening a diamond necklace around my throat, "smile, speak when spoken to, and never ever discuss his business. What if they ask me direct questions? They won't. They know better." She met my eyes in the mirror. "These are not kind men, Mrs. Moretti. They respect strength and fear weakness. Show neither." I descended the stairs at 7:45 to find Adrian waiting in the entrance hall. He wore a tuxedo that fit him like a second skin, his dark hair slicked back, the scar on his face somehow adding to his magnetism rather than detracting from it. When he saw me, he went very still. "You look..." He stopped, cleared his throat. "Beautiful. You look dangerous." It came out more honest than I'd intended. His lips quirked. "Good. That's the point." He offered his arm. "Shall we?" The dining room had been transformed. Crystal and silver glittered under candlelight. A string quartet played softly in the corner. And at the table, men in expensive suits conversed in low tones, their eyes sharp and assessing. They went quiet as we entered. "Gentlemen," Adrian said smoothly, guiding me to my seat at his right hand. "Thank you for joining us. I'd like to introduce my wife, Elena." Murmurs of greeting, appraising looks. I smiled, channeling every ounce of confidence I didn't feel. The man across from me leaned forward, older, silver-haired, with eyes like chips of ice. "Moretti, you kept this one quiet. Where did you find such a beauty?" "She found me," Adrian replied, his hand settling on mine with casual possessiveness. "Sometimes fate knows better than we do." Lies delivered smooth as silk. Dinner progressed through multiple courses, conversation flowing around me like a river with dangerous undercurrents. They spoke in code, shipments and territories and negotiations. I played my part, offering polite comments. When prompted, laughing at jokes I didn't find funny. But I was watchful. I noticed the power dynamics, the way certain men deferred to others. The man with ice chip eyes seemed particularly interested in Adrian. His questions pointed. "Your father would be proud," the man said as dessert arrived. "You've taken what he built and elevated it." "My father built an empire on fear," Adrian replied coolly. "I prefer respect. Respect born from fear is the strongest kind, or the most fragile." Adrian's thumb stroked the back of my hand, a gesture of affection that felt more like a claim. True loyalty comes from mutual benefit, not coercion. The older man's gaze slid to me, knowing. Indeed, mutual benefit. I felt stripped bare under that look. He knew. They all knew. The marriage was a transaction, and I was the goods exchanged. The moment shattered when gunfire cracked from somewhere outside. Everyone froze. Then training took over, men reaching for concealed weapons, chairs scraping as bodies moved with practiced efficiency. Adrian was up in an instant, his hand on my shoulder forcing me down. "Stay here," he commanded, then to his men. "Positions." They moved as one, disappearing through doors like smoke. The quartet had stopped playing. The musicians huddled in the corner. I crouched beneath the table, heart hammering, as more gunfire erupted closer now, answered by return shots from somewhere in the house. This was his world, not marble floors and crystal chandeliers. Those were just set dressing. This violence and danger, this was the reality. The shooting stopped as suddenly as it began. Silence rushed in, oppressive and ringing. I waited, every muscle tense, until Lucia appeared. "Come," she said urgently, pulling me to my feet. Quickly. She led me through a side door and up a hidden staircase, moving with the efficiency of someone who'd done this before. We emerged in my suite, and she locked the door behind us. "What happened?" I demanded. "A message, nothing more." She went to the window, peering through a gap in the curtains. "They are sending a warning." "Who?" "The Rossinis. They have been dissatisfied with recent territorial agreements." She turned back to me. "You should rest. Mr. Moretti will handle this." "Handle it how?" "That is not your concern." But it was, because I was part of this now, bound to him in the eyes of his associates and his enemies alike. When they sent messages, I was part of the target. Adrian didn't come to check on me. The night stretched long and silent, broken only by the sound of cars arriving and leaving. I sat on my balcony, wrapped in a blanket, watching shadows move through the gardens. It was nearly dawn when my door finally opened. He looked exhausted, his tuxedo jacket gone, his shirt untucked and stained with something dark that might have been blood. But he was alive, moving under his own power. "Are you hurt?" I asked. "Not my blood." He crossed to the balcony, joining me in the cool morning air. "I apologize. That wasn't how tonight was meant to go." "What did they want?" "To remind me they're still relevant." He leaned against the railing, staring out at the lightening sky. "To test boundaries. And did they succeed?" His smile was cold. "They learned not to test me at all. I should have been frightened, should have seen that smile and remembered who he was, what he was capable of. But instead I found myself asking, 'The woman who saved you, did she die?'" Adrian went very still. For a long moment, I thought he wouldn't answer. Then, quietly, "Yes." "How?" "My father." The words were bitter. She was collateral damage in one of his power plays. Wrong place, wrong time. She wasn't part of this world, just caught in it. Understanding dawned, cold and terrible. "And I look like her?" "Yes." So this marriage, it's not just about legitimacy. It's about what? Redemption? Replacement? He turned to face me fully, and, in the dawn light, I saw something raw in his expression. I don't know, he admitted. Maybe both. Maybe neither. I saw your photograph in a file of debtors my associates had acquired. Saw your face and… He stopped. I acted on impulse, something I rarely do. You bought my debt and forced me to marry you on impulse? I paid your debt, he corrected. The marriage was an evolution. You're insane. Probably. He reached out, his fingers brushing my cheek barely a touch, gone before I could process it. But you're here. You're safe. And his voice caught. She doesn't have to be just a memory anymore. I should have been outraged. Should have thrown his words back in his face and demanded my freedom. But instead, I felt something shift in my chest. This ruthless, dangerous man had seen my face and been undone by a ghost. I'm not her, I said softly. I know. I can't replace her. I know that too. He stepped back, the moment of vulnerability closing like a door. But perhaps you can be something else. Something real. Before I could respond, he left, closing the door softly behind him. I stood on the balcony as the sun rose, painting the ocean gold and crimson, and wondered what I'd gotten myself into. Not just a business arrangement, not just a marriage of convenience, something far more complicated, far more dangerous, and despite everything, despite the fear and the anger and the absolute insanity of it all, I found myself wanting to understand. The days following the dinner were tense. Adrian disappeared into his study for hours at a time, emerging only for brief meals eaten in silence. The household moved with military precision, staff executing duties with an urgency that suggested threats still loomed. I threw myself into the suit, working late into the nights. The fabric whispered under my hands, the pinstripe catching lamplight like secrets. I poured every ounce of skill I possessed into it, making something that transcended mere clothing. It was nearly finished when Lucia found me in the atelier one evening. You should rest, she said, but there was something else in her voice. Concern? Warning? Almost done. I held up the jacket, examining the shoulders. Just the finishing touches. Mrs. Moretti Elena. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. May I speak freely? Of course. This house, it is not always safe, even for family. She glanced at the door, ensuring we were alone. There are people here, people close to Mr. Moretti, who do not have his best interests at heart. You're saying someone is betraying him? I am saying be careful. Trust no one. Not the staff, not his associates. She met my eyes. Not even me. Then why tell me this? Because you remind him of her, and that makes you valuable, and valuable things. She didn't finish the sentence. Didn't need to. Lucia, who are you really? A sad smile. Someone who has seen too much and said too little. She touched my shoulder briefly. Finish the suit. He will need all the armor he can get. Then she was gone, leaving me with more questions than answers. I completed the suit that night, hand-stitching the final buttons with a precision born of obsession. When I held it up in the morning light, I felt a surge of pride. It was beautiful, deadly, and elegant in equal measure. Adrian found me as I was pressing it. Is it ready? He asked. See for yourself. He took the hanger, examining the suit with an expert eye. I watched his expression shift surprise, then something deeper. He ran his fingers along the pinstripe, noting how it appeared and disappeared depending on the angle. Try it on, I said. He looked at me for a long moment, then nodded. Wait here. He returned 10 minutes later wearing the suit, and I forgot how to breathe. It fit perfectly. The midnight blue deepened his dark eyes, made them almost black. The cut emphasized his shoulders, the lean power of his frame. And the pinstripe, it moved with him, a subtle shimmer that suggested both wealth and danger. Well? He asked, turning. It's perfect. No, it's better than perfect. He studied himself in the full-length mirror. It's exactly what I needed without knowing I needed it. That's what good tailoring does. He caught my eyes in the reflection. Thank you. You're paying me with my life. I should thank you. Elena, don't. I turned away, busying myself with putting away tools. Let's not pretend this is anything other than what it is. I heard him move closer, felt the warmth of him at my back. And what is it? A transaction. You said so yourself. I said a lot of things. His hand settled on my shoulder, gentle. Not all of them were true. I turned to face him, and the proximity stole my words. He was close enough that I could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes, close enough to count the individual stitches in the scar on his face. What are you saying? My voice came out barely a whisper. I'm saying... He stopped, something warring in his expression. Then his phone buzzed, shattering the moment. He stepped back, checking the screen. I have to go. There's a situation. The Rossinis? Something else. I'll explain later. He moved to the door, then paused. Elena? Be careful. Don't trust anyone. Not even... Lucia. She already told me. Surprise flickered across his face. Did she? A grim smile. Good. That means she's still loyal. Then he was gone, leaving me alone with the scent of his cologne and 1,000 unspoken words. The situation turned out to be an attack on one of Adrian's shipments at the docks. I learned this from whispered conversations between staff, from the increased security presence, from the tension that sang through the mansion like a wire pulled taut. Adrian didn't come home that night, or the next. On the third day, Lucia appeared at my door with a request. Mr. Moretti has asked that you join him at the warehouse. He has a task for you. What kind of task? He will explain. The warehouse was all concrete and shadows, smelling of salt and oil. Adrian waited in what passed for an office, a glass-walled room overlooking the main floor, where men loaded and unloaded mysterious crates. You wanted to see me? I asked. I need your skills. He gestured to a rack of clothing suits, shirts, all expensive. These belong to my associates. I need you to examine them. For what? Surveillance devices, tracking chips, anything that might explain how the Rossinis keep anticipating our moves. His jaw tightened. Someone close to me is feeding them information. I need to know who. I approached the rack slowly, understanding dawning. You think the betrayal is in the clothes? It's one possibility. Will you check? I examined each piece carefully, using techniques my father had taught me, feeling for irregularities, checking seams, examining buttons. Most were clean, but in the lining of a jacket belonging to someone named Marco, I found something. A small electronic device, sewn in with invisible thread. This, I said, showing Adrian. His expression went cold. Marco. He pulled out his phone, issued rapid commands. Where is he now? A pause, while someone answered. Then, bring him to me. I watched the scene unfold through the glass. Marco being escorted in by 2 large men, his face going pale when he saw Adrian descending the stairs. Words were exchanged, too quiet for me to hear. Then Adrian hit him, a controlled strike that sent Marco reeling. I should have looked away, should have been horrified, but instead, I found myself watching Adrian with a strange fascination. This was who he really was, not the polite dinner companion or the man who touched my face with gentle fingers. This was the violence beneath the suit, the iron under the silk. When it was over, Marco dragged away, his betrayal confirmed. Adrian returned to the cell, office. Blood stained his knuckles. Thank you, he said, his voice flat. Your help was invaluable. What will happen to him? Nothing pleasant. He caught my expression. Does that disgust you? It should, I admitted. But I understand it. He betrayed you. He betrayed all of us. His actions could have gotten people killed. Will you kill him? A pause. Would you prefer I didn't? I thought about my father, safe in a hospital bed. About my shop, saved from closure. About the life I had now, bought with this man's ruthless efficiency. I don't know what I prefer anymore. Something softened in his face. You're honest. I appreciate that. He moved to wash his hands in a small sink, the water running pink. Most people lie to themselves about what they can accept. Pretend they have moral high ground they've already abandoned. And what have I abandoned? Nothing. You were forced into this world. He dried his hands, his movements controlled despite the violence I'd just witnessed. But you're adapting, learning its rules. That takes strength. Or moral flexibility. Both, maybe. He turned to face me fully. Elena, I know this isn't the life you chose, but you're surviving it. More than surviving, you're finding your place in it. That matters. Does it? Or am I just Stockholm Syndrome in an expensive dress? His laugh was unexpected, genuine. Fair question. He approached slowly, giving me time to step back if I wanted. I didn't. Let me ask you something. When you sewed that suit for me, did you hate doing it? No. Did you resent the craftsmanship, the artistry? No. Then perhaps, he said quietly, you're finding pieces of yourself, even here, even in captivity. His hand lifted, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear. Maybe we're both prisoners, just in different ways. How are you a prisoner? I was born into this life, expected to continue my father's legacy, maintain his empire. His thumb brushed my cheek, a gesture becoming familiar. I never chose it either. I just accepted it was my fate. But you have power, money, freedom. Do I? His smile was bitter. I can't walk away. Can't choose a different path. Every decision I make affects hundreds of people, their livelihoods, their families, their lives. That's not freedom, Elena. That's just responsibility wearing an expensive suit. I saw then what Lucia had meant about armor. The suit I'd made wasn't just clothing. It was protection, a barrier between his true self and the world that demanded he be something else. The woman who saved you, I said softly. Was she your freedom? His hand fell away. She was the possibility of it. Someone outside this world who saw me as just me. Not Moretti's son. Not a boss or a threat. He turned to the window, watching his men work below. She died because my father couldn't tolerate that possibility. I'm sorry. Don't be. It was 10 years ago. I've built my life since then. Built it better than he ever did. But you still see her face. I see it in yours. He glanced back at me, and I'm trying to determine if that's a gift or a curse. Before I could respond, his phone rang. He answered curtly, his expression darkening with whatever he heard. I need to go. A situation with the Rossinis has escalated. Stay here, I'll have you driven back. Adrian, yes? Be careful. His expression softened. Always am. Then, with a ghost of a smile. Besides, I have a new suit. I'm invincible now. He left, and I stood in that office overlooking a warehouse of secrets, wondering when exactly I'd started caring whether he came home safe. The attack came 3 days later. I was in the atelier, working on a commission for the wife of one of Adrian's associates, when Lucia burst through the door. Quickly, she gasped. We need to move you. What's happening? The Rossinis, they're coming here. Now. She grabbed my arm, pulling me toward the door. Mr. Moretti is in the city. We have to get you to the safe room. We ran through corridors I'd never seen, down a hidden staircase, through a door concealed behind a bookshelf. The safe room was small, steel-reinforced, with monitors showing various parts of the estate. On the screens, I watched black SUVs pour through the gates. Stay here, Lucia commanded. No matter what you hear, don't open this door for anyone except Mr. Moretti. What about you? I'll be fine. This isn't my first attack. She squeezed my hand. Remember, trust no one. Then she was gone, the door sealing with a heavy thunk. I watched the monitors as armed men spread through the grounds. Watched Adrian's security team engage them, gunfire crackling through the speakers. The mansion I'd come to know with its gardens and its elegance became a war zone in seconds. Minutes felt like hours. The fighting moved through the house, room by room. I saw men fall on both sides. Saw blood stain the marble floors I'd walked across daily. Then I saw Lucia. She was on the second-floor corridor, moving with purpose but not toward safety. She was opening doors, gesturing to someone off-screen, helping the intruders. My blood ran cold. Trust no one, not even me. She'd warned me because she knew I'd see this eventually. Knew I needed to understand the game being played. The betrayer wasn't Marco. He was just a decoy, meant to make Adrian think he'd found the leak. The real betrayer had been there all along, hiding in plain sight. On the monitor, Lucia turned toward a camera. For just a moment, our eyes seemed to meet. She mouthed something I couldn't hear, couldn't read her lips with certainty, but I thought it might have been, "I'm sorry." Then gunfire erupted on screen, and she fell. I screamed, though no sound came out, watched her body crumple, watched the man who'd shot her step over her without a glance. He was looking for something, looking for me. They swept through the mansion systematically, checking rooms, getting closer to my location with every passing minute. I realized with cold clarity that they knew about the safe room. Lucia had told them everything. I had maybe 5 minutes before they found me. The monitors showed the grounds where more SUVs were arriving, Adrian's reinforcements, finally. But they were engaging at the gates, too far away to reach me in time. I scanned the safe room frantically. There had to be another way out, some emergency exit. My hands ran along the walls, searching for seams, buttons, anything. Nothing. Footsteps echoed outside. Someone tried the hidden door, rattling it. A voice called out in Italian, words I didn't understand but whose meaning was clear. "We know you're in there." On the monitor, I saw Adrian's car screech to a halt at the front entrance. Saw him emerge, still wearing the midnight blue suit, now carrying a gun. He moved through the mansion with deadly purpose, taking down anyone in his path. But he was 1 floor away, and they were at my door. Something metal scraped against the lock. They were breaching it. I backed against the far wall, searching for anything I could use as a weapon. The only thing within reach was a fire extinguisher mounted in the corner. I grabbed it, feeling ridiculous. What was I going to do? Spray them to death? The door buckled. Another hit, and it would give way. Then Adrian's voice cut through, sharp and commanding. "Stand down or die where you stand." A pause, harsh words exchanged. Then gunfire close, deafening even through the steel door. Silence. "Elena?" Adrian's voice, rougher now. "It's me. Open the door." I hesitated. Trust no one, but what choice did I have? I opened it. He stood in the corridor, suit jacket torn, blood on his shoulder, his own this time. From a wound I could see now that he was close. Behind him, 3 bodies lay sprawled. "Are you hurt?" he asked. "No. But Adrian, Lucia, I know, I saw." Pain flickered across his face. "I trusted her. She was with us for 15 years. She told me not to trust anyone, even her. At least she gave you that." He swayed slightly, catching himself against the wall. "We need to move. The house isn't secure yet. You're bleeding. Flesh wound. I've had worse." But his face was pale, his breathing labored. "Let me see." I pushed aside his jacket, revealing the bullet wound in his shoulder. Blood soaked his white shirt, turning it crimson. The midnight blue jacket concealed most of it, but up close the damage was obvious. "It went through," he said. "That's good. That's terrible. You need a hospital." "No hospitals. Too exposed." He straightened with effort. "There's a medical room downstairs. Can you help me there?" I got under his good arm, taking as much of his weight as I could. We moved slowly through corridors littered with debris and bodies, past windows shattered by gunfire, through the wreckage of what had been a beautiful home. The medical room turned out to be a fully equipped surgical suite. Of course it was. Men like Adrian couldn't risk hospitals. "Supplies are in those cabinets," he said, sitting heavily on the examination table. "I'll talk you through it. I'm a tailor, not a doctor. You sew. This is just sewing." His attempt at a smile fell flat. "Please, Elena, I can't do it myself." So I became a field medic, following his terse instructions. "Clean the wound. Apply antiseptic," he hissed but didn't cry out. "Sutures. Needle through flesh instead of fabric." My hands shook but held steady enough. "You're better at this than you think," he said as I tied off the final stitch. "I'm going to be sick." "Not on the midnight blue suit, please. You worked too hard on it." Despite everything, the violence, the blood, the chaos, I laughed. It came out slightly hysterical, but genuine. "You're worried about the suit? It's a very good suit." He caught my hand with his uninjured one. "Thank you for this, for not running when you had the chance." "Where would I run?" "Anywhere. The safe room could have gotten you to the garage. You could have taken a car, disappeared. I hadn't even thought of it, hadn't considered escape as an option. When had that happened? When had I stopped seeing myself as a prisoner and started seeing myself as... What? Part of this? Part of him? "I couldn't leave you bleeding," I said finally. "Why not?" "Because..." I stopped, uncertain how to finish. "Because despite everything, despite the forced marriage and the violence and the danger, somewhere along the way I'd started to care. About him. About this impossible situation we were trapped in together. Because you're a good person," Adrian finished for me. "Better than this world deserves." "I'm not." I'm just trying to survive." "No. Survival would have been running. You chose compassion." His thumb stroked across my knuckles. "That's different. That's—" The door burst open. Men in tactical gear flooded in, weapons raised. I tensed, but Adrian squeezed my hand. "Stand down," he ordered. "The house is clear." They lowered their guns, and I recognized some of them his inner circle, the ones who'd survived. They looked at me with new respect, I realized. Word must have spread that I'd stayed, that I'd helped him. "Status?" Adrian asked. "All business despite his injury. Rossini's are dead or scattered. We have 3 prisoners for questioning. The estate is secure." The lead man, I thought his name was Vincent, glanced at me. "Mrs. Moretti, are you harmed?" "No, I'm fine." "She saved my life," Adrian said simply. "See that everyone knows." Vincent nodded. "Yes, sir." He issued orders to the others, coordinating cleanup and security. When he left, Adrian and I were alone again. "Why did you tell them that?" I asked. "Because it's true. And because now you're protected by more than just our marriage." He stood carefully, testing his shoulder. "They'll die. For you now. That's how this works. You've earned their loyalty. By sewing you up, by choosing to stay when you could have run, by showing strength when it mattered." He cupped my face with his good hand. "You're not a prisoner anymore, Elena. You're family. That's a different thing entirely." I wanted to argue, to insist nothing had changed, but looking into his eyes, exhausted, grateful, something else I couldn't name, I realized he was right. Something had shifted. Maybe weeks ago, maybe today. But somewhere along the way, the chains had become threads, and threads could be woven into something new. "What happens now?" I whispered. "Now I finish this war with the Rossinis, permanently." His jaw tightened. "They came into my home, threatened my wife. That can't stand." "Your wife?" The words sounded strange. Real somehow. "Yes." He leaned closer, his forehead touching mine. "Mine, if you'll allow it." My breath caught. This was the moment. The choice he'd claimed always existed. I could pull away, could maintain the distance, could keep this transactional, or I could step forward. I kissed him. It was soft, brief, an answer to a question we'd been circling for weeks. When I pulled back, his eyes had darkened with something fierce and tender. "Elena, don't say anything yet." I stepped back, needing space to think. "Just finish this. End the war. Then we'll talk about what this is." He nodded slowly. "I can do that." The next week was chaos. Adrian orchestrated his response with surgical precision, hitting Rossini holdings, cutting off their supply lines, turning their allies against them. I watched from the mansion as he dismantled their empire piece by piece. He wore the midnight blue suit to every meeting, every negotiation. His armor. I kept sewing, kept working, but everything felt different now. The staff treated me with respect, bordering on deference. Adrian's associates sought my opinion on small matters. I was no longer just the boss's wife, I was Mrs. Moretti, with all that entailed. And at night, when Adrian came home exhausted and blood-stained, I helped him. Cleaned wounds, listened to his plans, offered what comfort I could. We didn't kiss again, didn't cross that line, but the intimacy grew deeper, built on trust and understanding rather than passion. It was more dangerous that way. Passion could burn out. This might last. The end came on a rainy Thursday. Adrian called me from the car. "It's done. The Rossinis have sued for peace. The war is over. Are you safe?" "I'm alive. That's close enough." A pause. "I'm coming home." He found me in the atelier, working on a dress I didn't need to finish. When he walked through the door, still wearing the midnight blue suit despite the late hour, I saw it in his face. "We need to talk," he said. My heart sank. "Okay." He sat in the chair by the window, and I realized how tired he looked. Not just physically soul-deep exhaustion that came from choices no one should have to make. "The marriage contract," he began. "I'm voiding it." The words hit like a physical blow. "What?" "You fulfilled your end. Your father is healthy, recovering well. Your shop could reopen if you wanted. And the war that made you valuable as a wife is over." He met my eyes. "You're free, Elena. Free to leave. Free to live your life. No debt, no obligation. I don't understand. I'm letting you go. Pain etched every word. You deserve the choice I never gave you. So choose. Stay because you want to, or leave because you should. And if I stay, then it's real. Not a contract, not a transaction. A real marriage. With all that means. He stood, crossed to me. But you need to be free to make that choice. Need to know you can walk away. I stared at him. This complicated, dangerous man who'd bought my debt and somehow earned my heart. Where would I go? Anywhere. I've set up an account for you enough to start over anywhere. In the world. New city, new life, new everything. You've thought of everything. I've tried. His hand lifted to my face, a gesture I'd come to crave. But I can't decide for you. This has to be your choice, freely made. What do you want? I want you to stay. The admission came rough, honest. I want to build something real with you, something not founded on desperation and debt. I want. He stopped, swallowed hard. I want you to love me, not because you have to, but because you choose to. And if I can't, then I'll live with that. He stepped back, giving me space. Take time. Think about it. Whatever you decide, I'll accept. He left me there, alone with the most important choice of my life. I didn't sleep that night. Paced my suite, walked the gardens, stood on the balcony watching the ocean. Thought about everything that had brought me here, the desperation, the fear, the slow transformation from prisoner to partner. Thought about the life I could have. Freedom, money, the ability to go anywhere and be anyone. And thought about the life I had. Complicated, dangerous, but somehow mine. By morning, I knew. I found Adrian in his study, staring at paperwork he wasn't reading. He looked up when I entered, and I saw hope and fear war in his expression. I choose, I said simply. I choose to stay. Elena, not because I have to. Not because I'm afraid or trapped or think I have no other option. I crossed to him, taking his hands. Because in this insane situation, in this world I never wanted, I found something I didn't know I needed. What? You. Us. I squeezed his fingers. This is terrifying and probably insane, but it's real. And I'd rather have real and complicated than safe and empty. He pulled me into his arms, holding me like I might disappear. Are you sure? I'm sure I want to try. I'm sure I care about you, though I probably shouldn't. I'm sure that when you were bleeding, the thought of losing you hurt more than I could bear. I pulled back enough to see his face. Is that enough? It's everything. He kissed me then, deep and desperate and full of promises we'd figure out how to keep. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, I rested my forehead against his. What now? Now we build something real. A real marriage. A real partnership. He smiled, and it transformed his face. And you continue being the best tailor on the coast. Modest goals. I prefer achievable ones. He kissed me again, softer this time. Thank you, Elena, for choosing me when you didn't have to. Thank you for giving me the choice. The weeks that followed were different. Not easier, this life would never be easy but honest. Adrian showed me more of his world, trusted me with decisions that mattered. I worked on my designs, took new clients, built something that was mine within the larger framework of his empire. We learned each other, his tells when a deal was going badly, my need for quiet time to process, the way we fit together in unexpected ways, two broken pieces forming something new. It wasn't perfect. We fought about his hours, about the danger, about the secrets he still kept. I struggled with jealousy when women flirted with him at business dinners. He wrestled with overprotectiveness that sometimes felt like control. But we worked through it, built trust brick by brick, conversation by conversation. 3 months after the Rossini War ended, I reopened my shop. Not the old one on Morrison Street that belonged to a different life. This one was in a better neighborhood, larger, with an apartment above for consultations. Adrian had wanted to buy me something grander, but I'd insisted on modest, on something that felt like mine. The grand opening drew a surprising crowd. Adrian's associates and their wives, curious about the woman who'd tamed Moretti. My old clients, thrilled to have me back, and new ones, drawn by reputation and the whispered stories. I stood, behind the counter, surrounded by fabrics and possibility, and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Joy. Adrian arrived late, still in his work suit but with flowers he'd clearly picked up last minute. "Sorry. Meeting ran long. You're here. That's what matters." I took the flowers. Wildflowers. Nothing expensive. Somehow perfect. "What do you think?" He looked around my shop, at the dreams made real, and smiled. "I think you've built something beautiful." "So have we." He pulled me close, kissing me in full view of the customers. Whispers rippled through the shop scandal. Romance, the dangerous and the domestic intertwining. When he released me, his eyes were soft. "Proud of you. Proud of us." That night, we stood on our balcony, not my room anymore. Our room. A space we'd made together, watching the ocean turn silver under moonlight. "Do you miss her?" I asked quietly. The question I'd been afraid to voice. "Sometimes," Adrian admitted. "But less now. You're not a replacement, Elena. You're something different. Something better. Because it's real and chosen. I still can't believe this is my life. Strange how things work out." He pulled me against his chest, wrapping his arms around me. "A desperate tailor and a ruthless boss. We shouldn't work. But we do. But we do," he agreed. "Against all odds. Against all logic." I turned in his arms, rising on my toes to kiss him. Maybe love doesn't need to be logical. Maybe it just needs to be brave. We stayed there as the moon tracked across the sky. Two people who'd found each other in the darkness and chosen to build something in the light. The path ahead wouldn't be easy. His world would always carry danger. My independence would always chafe against his protectiveness. We'd fight and struggle and work to make this strange marriage function. But we'd do it together, not bound by debt or obligation, but by something far stronger. Choice, trust, love earned stitch by stitch, thread by thread, until the seams no longer showed and all that remained was the whole cloth of our lives together. I'd come to his mansion as a prisoner, desperate and afraid. I stayed as a partner, powerful and free. And somewhere in between, in the space between silk and steel, between danger and devotion, I'd found not just survival but something worth surviving for. The thread that had snapped that terrible night in my shop had been rewoven into something new, something stronger. A marriage of two lives, two worlds, stitched together with care and patience, and the reckless courage it takes to love someone you shouldn't. But love, I'd learned, was never about should. It was about choosing to stay when leaving would be easier, about seeing someone at their worst and finding their best, about building something beautiful from broken pieces. We were both broken pieces, but together, we made something whole. And that, I realized as Adrian's heartbeat echoed against my cheek, was the only thread that mattered, the only one strong enough to hold. Love, freely given. Trust, hard-earned. Two lives bound not by chains but by choice. And that made all the difference.